The last thing we'll be doing before we print this drawing is to add some text. As I mentioned before, that text is going to go right under here, under the viewport. One of the first things that we'll need to do is to change our layer to the text layer. Right, so now any text that I include will be on the proper layer. And again, if you were to put it on the incorrect layer, it's very easy to move it to the correct one. So don't worry about that. Right. The next thing that we'll do is go to the Annotate tab. And annotations are basically any of the kind of graphics that are used to supplement some of the objects that represent building items. So that's going to include things like dimensions, any kind of notes, text titles, angle kind of notations, anything like that. On this tab, you're going to find there is a text panel, and there's a little arrow here called text style. And if you click on that, you can create a new text style. So this one that we're going to create, let's go ahead and use an annotative style as the base for it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I'm going to click on annotative and I'm going to click on new. Right now, this should be your name. And again, it could be last name, last name, and then we'll call it style. Something like that. It should have something that identifies you as the author. Click on OK. All right, now for the font, the default is Arial, but you can choose your own font. One of your roles as someone who does drawings is to be as clear as you can. So you want to make sure you're not using something that's very ornate or difficult to read. It should be very clear to whoever's looking at your drawings. I'm going to make mine the Century Gothic, which is one that I use for a lot of stuff, but you do not need to do this. Okay, so all these other settings should remain the same. And we want to make it the current style. So if I make new text, it's going to automatically fall in this. We're going to say yes. Okay, so let's just make sure yes, and then close. Okay, so now I'll be adding some text. Okay, if you go over to where it says multi-line text, you'll see an option for a single line of text. Basically, if we have multi-line, that means we can do paragraphs of text, but we don't need to do that for this one. All right, so what it's asking for is the start point. Now, text has something called a justification point. So if you want it to be centered, or if you want it to be left aligned or right aligned, the justification is how you set that. So instead of just picking a point here, first thing I'm going to do is go to justify. And you'll see a bunch of options here, right, left, center. I'm going to choose one that says MC, which is short for middle center, because I want this text to be centered from left to right on my sheet and from top to bottom just below the viewport. Okay, so click on MC. All right, now it's saying specify where that middle point of text is going to be. Now, basically what we're doing, as I mentioned, is centering it. So if it is 8.5 inches from one side of the sheet to the other, halfway would be 4.25. So I could input 4.25, comma, and if you remember, this was 3 inches from the bottom of the sheet to the bottom of the viewport. So half of that would be 1.5, and then enter. All right, so you can see it now has a point about which to locate the text. And it's asking me now for a paper height. So how big will this text be when printed? I want to make it smaller than this. 0.2, if I made it that height, it probably wouldn't fit on the paper. So I'm going to make it 1/8 of an inch. So I'm clicking here, 0.125, and then enter. Okay, rotation angle, I don't want it to be rotated. It's just going to be normal horizontal rotation, relative to. Now it's going to ask me to input some text. So at the moment, I'm just going to kind of put in some gibberish. Okay, now what I'm going to do is click to the side and press escape. So I have this text created, right? And it's not what I want it to say, but it's in the correct location. So once I have it there, I just need to edit that text. So going to the assignment sheet, this is what we want this to say. Harold Washington College, Architecture 170, spring, or it would be fall of 2023 or whatever semester would be appropriate, title block exercise, and then your name. Okay. So let's go back to CAD file. How do I change this text? Double click on it. When it highlights, place your cursor in there. You can see it. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. All right, so let's repeat that process, okay? Double click on the text. Once it's highlighted, go ahead and place the cursor somewhere. So Harold Washington College. And then what I'd like for you to do is put some kind of divider between the various bits of text here. So I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. Architecture 170. Okay, let's see here. Is it fall? Is it spring? Is it summer? And the year. Title block exercise. You can separate them if you want to 2 words, title and block. And then lastly, your name. And if you click out of it, that should be good. Now, if your text is too wide, you can make it smaller. It could be that your font style is too big. You could abbreviate HWC. Anyway, just so you can kind of get all of those items in there. For these dividers, you could do it as a hyphen, as I have, or maybe one of these vertical lines, basically just to give some kind of separation between each element. And that's all for the text. Be sure to save your file, and you'll be ready for the printing.